just ahead on Art Rocks, the careful craft of recreating real-life people in clay. Alanis Morissette talks about the success of her 1995 hit record, Jagged Little Pill, and an invitation to join in the Native American social ceremony, the powwow. That's all coming up next on Art Rocks.
Support for this program is provided by Georgia Pacific Port Hudson operations. Like the impulse that drives an artist's creativity, Georgia Pacific's 850 Louisiana employees are driven to produce quality paper products for your home and business. With additional support from the Renaissance Baton Rouge Hotel, centrally located for business and pleasure travel, the Renaissance offers intrigue, style, and southern hospitality. And by the Watermark Baton Rouge. Art, history, and commerce come together in the heart of downtown Baton Rouge at the Watermark, located in the historic Louisiana Trust and Savings Bank building. And by Prescience Point Capital Management, a fact-based private investment manager using forensic investigation to benefit clients. Research with impact. And by Ann Conley Fine Art, with the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting and viewers like you.
Hello, and thank you for joining us for Art Rocks with me, James Fox Smith, publisher of Country Roads magazine. Meet a Baton Rouge artist who has developed an amazing talent for replicating real people using clay. Becky Gottsegen says she learned the basics while attending a few workshops. The rest is practice, practice, practice. Here's her story.
The sculptural work that I admire the most, that I'm really drawn to, are pieces that are very deep and disturbing, that create a lot of emotions about what was the artist thinking, what was the person that sculpted thinking, because I'm really, really drawn completely to figurative art.
Becky Gottsegen has always been drawn to three-dimensional art, but she was in her 50s before she decided that she would become a sculptor.
I always wanted to do people, and I wanted to do large sculptures, but there were no classes in Baton Rouge or even New Orleans at the time. I took 2 one-week workshops at Santa Fe Clay, and one was working solid and hollowing the piece out when you were finished, and the other was working with the pinch method. I kind of experimented with both, and I tend to go back to working solid and hollowing out because you have kind of more flexibility. It was exciting to take my first workshop and see that I had some talent. I could create something that looked like what it was supposed to look like.
One of her most fulfilling projects came out of a trip she took with her husband, Dr. Warren Gottsegen, to a conference about issues surrounding the human brain and cognitive diseases like Alzheimer's and dementia. There, Becky had an encounter with another artist.
Taryn Moeller-Nickel was studying slides of the brain of people who had died from Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia or from complications. And she was doing these really wonderful drawings of what she was seeing in the brain, and she was incorporating parts of the faces. And when I saw it, my mother died from complications of dementia when she was 79 in 2006. I said, "Why, we should collaborate on doing something together."
While Taryn created paintings of the brain, Becky made busts of the way the patients looked on the outside. Charlie's Place is a support facility for patients being treated for Alzheimer's and dementia. One patient was Sheldon Bourgeois, the husband of fellow artist Billy Bourgeois.
Sheldon was so cute when I came and I showed him the picture of his bust that I did. He turned to his friends at Charlie's Place and he said, "You see, I told you I was going to be famous." It was so adorable. But Sheldon ended up very sadly dying before the show went up at the Manship, and Billy called me and asked me if she could use the bust at his memorial service, which was one of the most touching parts of it, I think.
Becky was also later challenged to craft characters portrayed in a play written by Lafayette resident Patricia Sidman. The play was based in part on the lives of real people.
I said, I would love to meet Patricia, and I'd love to talk to her about doing figures that relate to these women. She thought it was a fun idea, and I went and met with them all, and I took pictures of them. And so I did this series of women saying obnoxious things. And Patricia picked first because it was her play. And she's the one who's saying, "I'm sorry I hurt your feelings when I called you stupid. I thought you already knew." The director of the Acadiana Center for the Arts said, "We have had the best reaction to this show of anything we've ever done here. Even when I'm trying to make something that serious, there's a twist to it." I like to laugh at art, particularly in our political environment right now.
Becky began by working on a sculpture of an elderly woman uncomfortable with being seen in a bathing suit.
When I went to sculpt her arms, I realized that she wasn't embarrassed or ashamed, that she was like, here I am, and I'm old, and I have rolls in my middle, and I'm proud of who I am. And so I changed her hands, and she has a cigarette in her hand.
Becky has sculpted scores of personalities, including President Donald Trump, former presidential candidate and Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, and the prominent PBS documentarian Ken Burns. But the piece she is proudest of is that of her own mother.
I really was putting off my mother, and I think I captured her better than anyone. And all the pictures I had of her were old, and obviously never took pictures thinking I was going to ever sculpt her face. But people who see it, who knew my mother, say, "Oh my God, it looks just like your mother."
Recently, Becky has become interested in learning a new sculptural technique called hyperrealism.
Well, the way that hyperrealism is done is the initial sculpture is done in clay. The way the hair is done, you take a needle and you use a little grinder and you grind the tip of the hole in the eye of the needle off, so it becomes like a little cup like this. And then you hold the hair and you just poke it in at the direction that hair grows.
Becky is still taking workshops, including one with an artist who works with the legendary wax museum Madame Tussauds in London. She is optimistic that she'll continue to improve with each person she recreates and each lesson she takes. Louisiana's always abuzz with opportunities to get up close and personal with the visual and performing arts. So here's a list of some exhibits, performances, classes and festivals coming up this month. To learn more about these and other events in Louisiana, pick up a copy of Country Roads magazine. Another resource, the Art Rocks website features every episode of the program, so just log on to lpb.org and follow the prompts. Our next story originates out of Cleveland, but it's actually got more to do with a musical masterpiece by the renowned Baroque composer Johann Sebastian Bach. Controversy has long swirled around his oratorio, the St. John Passion, and here is why.
It came out of nowhere. Released just before summer in 1995, the album Jagged Little Pill tore into culture with all the ferocity its title would suggest. The lyrics were all those of a teenager, Alanis Morissette, who had been a purveyor of pop in her native Canada. Today, she remembers, she suddenly had something altogether different to say.
I was giving myself permission to express exactly what was going on without sugarcoating it.
Over the next year came a flood of singles that burned through the sheen of life. It was the anti-pop, and writing with producer Glenn Ballard, Morissette got real and raw.
There was an urgency to the writing, definitely. It was almost manic in a way. A very channeled experience, super exhausting. but really, really gratifying. And we got all the vocals on tape, 1 or 2 takes, 80% of the record are the original demos. So it was a very sacred experience, certainly.
The record won 5 Grammys, went on to sell 33 million copies, and is now among the best-selling albums of all time.
Do you look back at it now and what happened?
What the heck happened? Good question. I mean, I make funny guesses at this, but some of it was that there was a movement, whether it was the feminist movement or consciousness evolution movement, and the wave was happening, and I feel as though I put my hand up and volunteered to be on the front top of the wave with my surfboard, and I became a spokesperson of a kind for this emergence of an authentic experience of what it is to be human, what it was to be a woman in those times.
Let's try this because it really may not work, and we're going to go to Plan B.
Today, under the direction of Tony winner Diane Paulus, Jagged Little Pill is taking on a new life as a brand new musical at the American Repertory Theater.
The running joke became, there was a circumstance in the story that was emerging, and I would say, I have a song for that, and they would say, of course you do.
The musical centers on a middle-class family in Connecticut. Picture perfect on the outside, they're unraveling from within, beset by a host of issues plaguing families today, from opioid addiction to sexual assault.
I was up for it out of the gate. I didn't want the songs to lead as such. I wanted the songs to support the story, if that makes sense.
The songs do an incredible amount of heavy lifting.
Academy Award-winning screenwriter Diablo Cody makes her theatrical debut with Jagged Little Pill, writing the show's book. With myriad projects in the works, including her latest film Tully, which just opened to rave reviews, Cody says she didn't have time for the show. But as someone whose adolescence was shaped by Morissette, she couldn't say no either.
I couldn't not do it. Those are the projects that you can't walk away from when you think to yourself, I will be consumed with jealousy and rage if somebody else gets to do this. Like the ones where you can just see future you regretting not doing this.
Here, Cody has created the family and all the issues drowning them as a metaphor for society writ large. Addiction chief among them. Apt, she says, for a show called Jagged Little Pill.
Right now, we are in a place as a society where a lot of people are in desperate need of comfort and are feeling just kind of disenfranchised. And so it honestly doesn't surprise me to see the opioid crisis. It just doesn't, it feels sort of grotesquely appropriate to the times.
As does Morissette's music, even though it's now more than 20 years old.
It's crazy to me how well it holds up. There's no song that I hear and think, oh, that's juvenile, or, oh, I can't believe I thought this was profound when I was 16. If anything, it's more profound to me now.
I can still sing it with as much conviction, perhaps even more, based on the fact that I think there's more receptivity to some of the topics that I dive into when I write.
Including anger, a label that's always been synonymous with her work, and which defines some of the show's younger characters.
I love anger, and if I'm going to be one-dimensionalized as anything, I'll take anger. I think it's a gorgeous life force. I think it gets a bad rep because of how it shows up destructively in the world. The actings out of anger in destructive ways is a big boo for me. But the actual life force itself and the sense in the body of what anger is, and the heat and the jaw clench and the forward movement. I mean, it helps me and others, I'm assuming, set boundaries, speak up for oneself, say no.
Morissette says when she finished the album, she had no idea it would be so successful. The intention was to make the music matter. A philosophy she now carries to the musical.
My dad said when I was younger, he goes, sweetheart, people are going to love you, people are going to hate you, and most people won't give a and I said, okay, well, if that's the case, I'm left with just defining myself and trying things on for size and seeing if they fit and defining what my value system is and how I want to show up and how I don't want to show up, and that's all I can continue to do.
On the road again to visit a woodworker who calls Cincinnati, Ohio home. With a creative mind and incredible attention to fine detail, Jeff Vollmer sculpts complex wooden boxes that are a treat to open. Check these out.
A puzzle box is a puzzling box. It's a box that's also a puzzle. You have to work your way into the box. That's the hard part. You can't really describe how a puzzle box looks because everyone looks different. That's part of what a puzzle box is something that a little more unusual in its shape, its configuration, but never two identical pieces. I only know how to make snowflakes. If anybody would have told me I would be a professional woodworker in my life, I would have laughed at them. You know, really? Come on. You know. I was a buyer for a department store chain, God's sakes, you know. But you learn, and you adapt, and you have fun doing it. When we start the process of making a box, first thing we do is dry our wood. I work with wood that most people wouldn't even bring in the house and put in the fireplace. Most of my wood comes from the West Coast because I work with burls, and burls are the roots of the tree. Hardwood basically dries at a rate of 1 inch per year. Now, people don't realize that you're looking at a 5-inch thick piece of wood. It took me 5 years just to get that piece of wood to where I could work it. I never know how things are going to turn out until they're done because there's no plans. We never draw anything out. I can't draw. Man, I can't. I'm useless with a pencil. To design them, you have to let the wood talk to you an awful lot first off. Because sometimes the wood's going to let you do things and sometimes it's not. So if it's got a particular shape or odd thing to it, you try to do something with that. So then we start making our cuts. And cutting is all done on one saw, and primarily 99.5% of our work is done on a bandsaw, which is a circular blade going around, and we use an 1/8-inch blade. And I say most all of our work is done on that. Sometimes we use a drill press to drill holes for magnets or springs or things, but pretty much we use a bandsaw to make the boxes. And then we got to glue pieces back together. Then we go through lots of sanding. I mean, we've got sanders you can't believe. Then we put lacquer on it, 7 coats of lacquer over that. Put our felt lining in the box, and the last thing we do is put our little feet on the bottom, and I sign each piece by hand, and we put a price sticker on when it's done. About 20 years ago, give or take a couple, I woke up one morning at 4 in the morning, and this thought in my head. Well, I got out of bed at 4 in the morning and came down to the shop. And my thought was, at 4 in the morning, does a drawer have to be straight? I never saw a drawer that wasn't straight. It doesn't mean they have to be. So I came down to the shop and I made a small box that had one round drawer. It went in one side and it came out the other. 20 some odd years later now, those are what I call the ultimate jewelry box. So yeah, that's probably my favorite piece is making a round drawer box. They're the hardest pieces I make. They're the most time consuming. Some of them will run up to 100 man-hours. 25 years I've made boxes, and every year I've found a new way to do something bizarre. To create something, to hide something. I love hiding things. We have boxes we call our cash boxes, which are designed to hide money. And when you open the box up, it looks like a very simple little piece, and then you see a note inside that says, look for the hidden money. And people laugh at me and say, oh, there's nothing in there. I say, certainly there is. There's $1,000 in that box. And not only is there $1,000 in that box, but it's in its own box. You just haven't found it yet. 20 minutes later, they're calling me a liar. Imagine. And I say, thank you. I want people to have fun. I want people to be mystified. I want people to look at it and say, how the hell did that crazy guy do that? Or maybe, why would somebody do that?
Back here on home turf, Louisiana's Chitimacha tribe hosts the annual social gathering known as a powwow to celebrate their culture through music, dance and feasting. It's also an opportunity for everyone to enjoy the customs, arts and crafts preserved by tribes throughout the United States. The Native American powwow continues to be a Louisiana treasure.
Within the depths of old-growth cypress swamps, miles of sugarcane fields, and bayous and rivers of the Atchafalaya Basin lays a 1,000-acre parcel of land. It is the home of the sovereign nation of the Chitimacha tribe of Louisiana. Less than half of the tribe's membership lives on their reservation, but on this one weekend, the Chitimacha, along with other tribal nations, gathered in large numbers to celebrate the age-old tradition of powwow.
The word powwow is actually from the Algonquin language, and it meant a gathering of medicine people. And so I guess the colonists sort of extrapolated that it was just a gathering of tribal people. And so the term became being used, although it was more ceremonial at that point.
But as the reservation system began, government regulations suppressed the gatherings, and Native Americans were thought to be a vanishing race. In the late 1800s, Colonel William Frederick Cody, Buffalo Bill, influenced the U.S. government to allow him to secure Native Americans for his Wild West show. Between 1887 and World War I, over 1,000 Native Americans went Wild Westing and were able to preserve dances and ceremonies that otherwise may have been lost. As that powwow culture became popular throughout this country and Europe, Native Americans educated the general public about their history and culture. Over the years, powwow soon became a source of tribal enterprise, and today is a place where families of many nations gather to sing, dance, and celebrate and preserve their shared cultures. It all begins with the grand entry, as the eagle staff is carried into the circle, followed by the American, state, and tribal flags, all carried by veteran warriors.
So it's a lot of power in there. It's all those eagle feathers that you see, forces from the eagle. It flies the highest to us, and it always brings us a lot of good feelings and blessings to the people for those warriors a long time ago.
Once everyone is in the arena, a prayer is offered and a song is presented to honor the flags and veterans. And then the powwow dancing begins.
Everybody has their own dance styles. You know, you have certain dances, but you have your own dance styles. Have fun. Have fun, enjoy yourself. That's the main thing.
Each dancer is telling their story. They might be telling the story of a hunt. They may be tracking something. They listen to that drum. We refer to the drum as the heartbeat of American Indians. It's our heartbeat. So when that drum starts, that's our heart going. And then the spirit comes out of it, and it moves you. And when you begin to move, you begin to tell a story. And the most important thing of all is when you put your regalia on, you feel like who you are. You feel like the person that you represent, your tribe.
I am considered a Southern cloth dancer. You'll see a variety of different styles of cloth. However, mine is considered a tea dress, and it's covered with imitation elk teeth. Everything on what I'm wearing represents my tribe.
For Pat and Tanya Moore, powwow is a weekend way of life for them, a chance to escape the demands of their work week and keep their cultural traditions alive.
All the hustle and bustle throughout the week, all that goes away the minute we get dressed and we go out there and dance with our brothers and sisters. These relationships are lifelong, they're generational.
And for some, like Adam Norwell, it's a full-time way of life.
It's who I am. I mean, it's a part of my culture. It's how I identify myself. Me and my family, we're full-time powwow dancers. My kids are homeschooled, and this is what we do. We travel the country and perform and compete at powwows.
Competition dancing is an important part of the powwow, and a good dancer can make a good living traveling from one event to another.
It's a lot like a rodeo circuit. You know, when people rodeo, they go from one event to the next event to the next event in a competition series.
Yes, it does feel like family, but at the end of the day, it's still a competition. It's a lot of little things that we look at, from, you know, the amount of prize money, how are we doing compared to other tribes, just what gifts are we going to give them, you know, how do we honor the people that are coming to be with us.
To me, it's a way of life. I grew up doing it. Ever since I could walk, I was dancing. That's the way we bring our children in. As soon as they begin to walk, we dress them, we get them out in the arena, and we turn them loose and we let them dance. Throughout the years, they find out who they are and what they represent.
It's like a healing that helps us stay closer to our culture, because we're all spread out now. We're all spread out. And people that go, the younger people, they're learning, so they can carry on when we're gone.
And that is that for this edition of Art Rocks. But keep in mind, you can always watch episodes of the show at lpb.org/artrocks. And meanwhile, Country Roads Magazine makes another great resource for learning what's going on in the arts all across this state. So until next week, I've been James Fox Smith, and thank you for watching.